killing of George Floyd sparked protests in the United States, with millions of Americans showing up against police brutality. In the weeks after Floyd's death, daytime demonstrations turned to nighttime uprisings, or looting and riots, depending on who's telling the story. According to President Trump, there was one place to lay the blame.
The violence and vandalism is being led by Antifa.
Hardly a new phenomenon, Trump and his surrogates have pointed to an Antifa threat since the protests and unrest on his inauguration day in 2017.
America is waking up to the menace of Antifa. Radical, leftist, Antifa thugs.
I was walking on the street and this guy sucker punched me in the back of the head.
Tonight, growing questions about who may be under those masks.
There are no hard figures as to how many people count themselves members of Antifa.
They've got clubs and they've got everything. Antifa!
On May 31st, Trump announced that he would list Antifa as domestic terrorists. But with no official leadership or official organization, even the Department of Justice has struggled to identify who or what Antifa is.
Antifa can be best thought of, I think, as an umbrella term for what is essentially a movement comprised of loosely organized groups around the country.
In Portland, birthplace of the modern anti-fascist movement in the U.S., the Trump administration deployed federal agents to suppress and, in some cases, abduct protesters, a move that led to escalating tensions in the streets.
What started 2 months ago as protests against police brutality has now become a nightly ritual.
53 days, 7.5 weeks, Portland, Oregon has been burning.
The terms slave patrol and militia were interchangeable and synonymous, literally the same exact thing.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Currently, what the communists call their Negro Revolutionary Movement, now masquerading behind the humanitarian banners of civil rights, is contributing tremendous momentum to the communist plans to take over the United States.
You tell them white folk in Mississippi that all the scared niggas are dead. We want black power. We want black power.
Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. The amendment would also give the federal government the power to enforce that principle.
When I heard about Sacramento, I was like, damn, these brothers are bad. They're here up in Sacramento in the capital, packing.
Tear down this wall.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
So thank you, Adam, for asking me to come here and run my mouth a little. Thank you guys all for showing. Appreciate it. So it's alt-right fascism, its motives, methods, and foundations, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what fascism is and what it is today in its modern manifestation, and then we're going to look at what it's been doing, all these attacks that have been going on over the last year. That's kind of what my video is. So the first and singularly most important thing to understand about fascism is that it is less an ordered, formulaic, structured system for a flourishing society than it is a way that terrified reactionary people coalesce into a mass whose sole purpose is to protect them from all that they fear, imagined or otherwise. Fascism is not some exhaustively constructed concept arrived at by some long process of rumination by experts of any kind, looking to facilitate a societal construct that's beneficial to all. Fascism is the logical fruition of ignorant, powerless, terrified people being manipulated by powerful, terrified people. In short, fascism is what astoundingly lazy, fearful people do in order to convince themselves they aren't astoundingly fearful, reactionary people without the inclination or wherewithal to understand the nature of all they fear. Instead, they want a strongman authority figure to say, trust me, follow me, I don't take no shit, and I ain't afraid of nothing. But more importantly, that authoritarian figure tells them, I can make all the complicated problems of the world seem like they have bumper sticker solutions. If only I had the proper authority to make my simple solutions happen. And we tend to call that person a fascist dictator. So long before the rises of now well-known fascist dictators such as Mussolini, Hitler, and Franco, the inevitability of these tyrants were predicted and even anticipated with immense accuracy by those that would come to be recognized as the first socialists. As the historic chapter on feudalism became glaringly evident it was reaching a close, the first capitalists began to emerge and gain power. It was the first socialists that recognized that this economic system would facilitate monopoly, first and foremost by way of the subjugation of the most adversely affected by that monopolistic inevitability. The first socialists understood that capitalism left to its unfettered devices would generate immense power for the few at the expense of the mass, and it would do so with as much violence and oppression as the human species can muster. It would thrive on manipulating our greatest fears and our need for the very simplest provisions to sustain the barest existence. And after recognizing with startling accuracy this inevitable reality, those socialists instantaneously began devising and even brought to fruition alternatives to the emerging power of the capitalists. In his book, We Don't Fear Anarchy, We Invoke It, author Robert Graham tells us the following in relation to the activities of these early socialists and their response to the birth of the capitalists. He says, the capitalists were seen as completely undeserving of the profits they extracted from the often hard labor of the workers. As an alternative to capitalism, some French workers began to create networks of mutual aid societies and cooperatives that would exchange goods and services directly between themselves on the basis of the amount of labor contributed, in order to achieve the kind of equivalent exchange that Proudhon had also been advocating. Pierre-Joseph Proudhon was, of course, a contemporary of, even somewhat of a mentor, or at the very least inspiration to Marx. Proudhon was most noted for the declaration of property as theft, the veracity of which I won't be deconstructing at this point. But Graham goes on to write, as with other skilled workers, Proudhon could see that industrialization was making many of them redundant, subjugating them to factory discipline and rote work, and reducing them to poverty. Modern industry was creating both overproduction and destitution. No matter how great the pace of mechanical progress, Proudhon observed, the ultimate effect was to, quote unquote, make the chains of serfdom heavier, render life more and more expensive, and deepen the abyss which separates the class that commands and enjoys from the class that obeys and suffers. Now, this dynamic understood, it's safe to assume that the masses, once they realize the reality of their dirt level status on the dramatically stratified social stratum, are likely to become resentful, even angry. They might begin to consider an uprising, or even, dare I say, a revolution. But the most successful of the capitalists also understand this inevitability. So, they must take measures to ensure their power once the exploitation gag is out of the bag. They can do this in two ways. One, brutally and violently, or the second and most advantageous current method is to manipulate the most ignorant and oftentimes most adversely affected, those rote workers Graham spoke of, into believing that it's not the wealthy capitalist's fault. No, it's the immigrants' fault you lost your job at the plant. Or it's those Muslim terrorists making our economy the dog shit mess that it is. And most importantly, this authoritarian figure and all his wealthy capitalist backers are the only ones that can save you from this misery. So an important thing to understand about fascism, as alluded to already, and I think that this rings true in all its historic manifestations, is there are essentially two kinds of fascists. There are the twisted, self-obsessed maniacs who are purposeful and knowing fascists, and there are the astoundingly ignorant, easily manipulated people who follow them. With that said, these two factions' roles, while symbiotic, differ starkly from one another. I'm reminded of Voltaire, who said, "Those that make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." The true fascists of today, the ones consciously plotting the tone of the narratives that will then get disseminated down to the most terrifyingly ignorant and often poorest of our monstrously stratified society, manage to stumble on a fairly sensible, if not even incredibly effective approach to facilitating the mission of manipulating and exploiting the masses. They became almost masters at subverting the pop culture dialogue and ultimately co-opting the phrasing and historically affected methodology we had previously used to subvert fascist narratives in the past. The current fascists became rather adept at either averting or ultimately appropriating our, meaning the historic left's, traditional methods and approaches of effective organizing in defense against tyranny. The most obvious example of blatant subversion being that verifiable sources no longer hold relevance. Trump gave the most uninformed and angry members of our society license to be feverishly proud of their stupidity. He gave them the words, fake news. Right? And quite possibly the most frustrating example of their modern methodology, though, has been the many ways with which they managed to appropriate much of the historically righteous and even oftentimes effective messaging, narratives, slogans, rallying cries, etc., that have been much of the cornerstones of historically righteous human rights struggles against power. The alt-right spurious and frankly offensive appropriation of the free speech movement being the most obvious example. I personally had the opportunity to read from the steps of Sproul Hall words first spoken there by Mario Savio during the most pivotal and even furious moment in the advancement of the original free speech movement. And as I read those words by Mario, I was shouted over by a choir of MAGA hat sporting American flag waving patriots singing "We Shall Overcome." These very same knuckle-noggin brainiacs who were obstructing the words of Mario Savio had sold their fascist onslaught on Berkeley University, to the university, sorry, not Berkeley University, I could add that. But they had sold this onslaught to the university on the legacy of Mario Savio and the free speech movement. And here they were, shouting down the words of the very man they had exploited to secure their fascist assault on campus. And that brings me to our first video. I'm going to show you the video of that.
It was Mario Savio on October 16, 1964, right here on the steps of Sproul Plaza, as he stood up against the exact same forces that are perverting his message to instill fascism in the United States. They have perverted the message of free speech and Mario Savio to sell this garbage and ignorant, ill-informed fear and hatred. By our courage, by dignity in the face of unprovoked violence, by the insatiable adherence to the principles of the students on campus, we've shown ourselves guilty of one thing. Of passionately entering into a conspiracy to uphold the First and 14th Amendment. Mario Savio, October 16th, 1964, right here. That's the Sproul Hall.
We've been saying this at Punks for Progress for quite some time, is get ready, 2020. We didn't predict COVID, but we were saying get ready because 2020 is going to be the greatest onslaught of fascist propaganda maybe the world has ever seen. I don't know. Because look, fascism, the way I define fascism, and I would invite, please, for any leftist comrades to give me a better definition, but I define fascism as the strong-arm defense mechanism of capitalist imperialist status quo in crisis. And what we have now is that Trump is the by any means necessary defense mechanism of capitalist, imperialist status quo in crisis. That's what Trump is. And he's now defending his right to stay in power, to continue to be that defense mechanism of what we see around us is the final collapse of capitalism. And so that's why we're seeing so much toxic rhetoric from Fox News and One American News Network. Full on, deep-throated, out in the open, defenses of terrorist murder. Pumping shit tons of money into convincing a lot of people in this country that it's okay that kid went and murdered those people. And it's not just to defend him, it's to convince other people to go do it too. Because America collapsing into what the capitalist ruling class have always described as third world countries, if we collapse into a legitimate failed state, that's good for the elite. The couple thousand people that are the capitalist ruling class elite of the planet, that doesn't hurt them. There'll be people enough to serve their coffee and drive their limos, and that they can fucking do gross ass fucking, Jeffrey Epstein shit too. That's all of us, that's all we are to them. All of us. And all you patriot fucks, that's all you are to them too. Because you're out there with your QAnon bullshit, exposing the pedos. As you defend a bunch of fucking people with numerous fucking credible accusations against them. As you pretend you care about fucking all the garbage that QAnon talks about. As you excuse it in your fucking Dear Orange leader. Doesn't matter, because these are just people who have no meaning or substance in their life, and they think that if they go out and shoot and murder somebody, then their life will matter in some way. And they're being taught, because all the capitalist imperialist fucking propaganda machine, it doesn't have a whole lot of new tricks. I mean, like I've said throughout the series, it's slowly built up this infrastructure of mythology that it constantly refers to, but it's that same, every time they roll it out in a new era, and every time they repackage it for the contemporary modern society in each generation, it still comes back to the same shit over and over, and it's losing its hold. And that's why it's pulling out the big guns of, no, it's okay. You can drive across straight lines and kill a black person if they stand up for fucking not being murdered. It's okay to go and do that. I mean, they're not hiding it. It's not sneaky. It's not secret. And while that's terrifying and just incalculably destructive and awful and horrible, it also signifies that if we get our shit together on the left, it's not, I would almost argue we don't need to commit a revolution. What we need to do is be organized enough to don't allow the final collapse of capitalism to deteriorate into Mad Max. Let's have an infrastructure in place of the things we know to scientifically work on the left. It's on us to fill the gap amidst all this destruction. It's doing all this stuff because it knows it can't survive. And I'm not an accelerationist. I don't want to do anything to contribute to the destruction and devastation that the ultimate collapse of capitalism will undoubtedly and is bringing. But so that's why I'm advocating we need to be organized. You need to be involved within some type of anti-capitalist organization, a communist organization, an anarchist mutual aid network. You need to be involved in something that is going to build the foundational structure of a post-capitalist society. Or we could just live in fear of the right and let them come out and fucking turn it into some fucking delusional version of The Walking Dead where they're just randomly murdering people. I mean, but at some point we're going to have to stand up to these people because they're going to murder more people. That's my fucking, I'm sorry, that's dark as fuck, but that's, am I delusional in thinking that all of this gives way in the next year as it even ramps up more and more through this election cycle? That this doesn't just result in a lot of fucking chaos and death committed by fucking members of this fucking QAnon death cult, these stochastic terrorists? It doesn't matter what happens whether Trump wins or not. An election is not going to make any of these people go, you know what? I'm kind of over it. This thing I've been devoting my life to, that I'm all in for, and I, spent every last dollar I have buying all my fucking fanny pack bar fucking outfits and shit and all this, my fucking backpack clothes, my matching camouflage fucking gear and all my fucking things where I can put bullets here and stuff there and knives there, and I got a compass, and I'm fucking G.I. Joe, Cub Scout, fucking Boy Scout, fucking mechanism of death cult, fucking terrorism, fucking 2.0 motherfucker. They're not just going to go, oh, well, Trump won or, well, Trump lost. They're absolutely, wholeheartedly convinced the Antifa's in cahoots with BLM and convincing them to murder fucking white people. And that this is the final battle between God and fucking Satan. They're not going to just unthink that overnight, man. Just like they didn't when fucking bigots came to the fore during the fight for in the Civil War. They've been fucking screaming and crying and preparing and weaponizing themselves and militarizing themselves and training for this imaginary civil war that none of us on the left ever fucking cared about. All we've ever wanted is for all people to be treated equal on a base level. And not have a handful of fucking capitalists rule the fucking world and make us all subservient, and that we're all forced to do labor for them while they just get fabulously wealthy and we stay subservient and fucking poor. And at best have a cool fucking truck that we can fly Trump flags out of before we go jet skiing on the weekend and go shoot some shit or whatever. Got our toys and whatever. It's good. Got a big screen TV and whatever. I got to defend it because America and Antifa wants to come and take it from me. Antifa just wants the dude in the truck to stop running people over with his truck. Anyway, fam. That's Reverend Aaron's P for Peace, People's History of America. I hope it helps. I hope it's something that maybe you can share with people if they're like, holy shit, like, what the fuck is going on? How do we get here? What does this all mean? It's like, this doesn't cover the entire history of how we got here, but my hope has been all along that I could piece together the PowerPoints of what results in Donald Trump, Boogaloo, and in a death cult. In a COVIDiot fucking death cult. That will think that you're the Illuminati, Antifa, Satanist if you wear a mask in public. That's convinced people, mothers and sisters and brothers and fathers who've had their sons murdered and shot in the back, standing up and going, please stop that, and looking at them and going, you're the most disgusting, evil thing I've ever seen in my life, and I have to kill you to defend America. Well, here's another thing, and I'm going to close on this. You fucking liberals and progressives, stop talking about that's not what America is. America has always been this. And it has always been a defense of this. It has always been a goddamn racist America. It has always been about defending the wealth and power of white supremacist fucking capitalists. America has always been the fucking model upon which fascism is built. Hitler took his eugenics cues from Amerikkka, scapegoating and oppressing people in mass imprisoning people. Amerikkka wrote the fucking book. This is not something that happened a long time ago. This is all an unbroken process of maintaining the mechanisms of fucking white supremacist slavery. I just ordered Mao Zedong's On Guerrilla Warfare, and I'll leave it at that.
So I just have a short little kind of conclusion to the presentation, and then one more fun little short video. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions about anything, if anybody has any. So engaging in dialogue, let alone debate with members of the alt-right is, as many have already deduced, usually a massive waste of precious time. But sometimes, if you can control the tone of the narrative and avoid being put on the defensive, I obviously believe such dialogue can be fruitful. But the far right, those that would still take to the streets or even just social media in favor of the Trump regime, especially at this point in the game, are far too entrenched in either their misinformed, ignorant, conspiratorial worldviews, or they are just outright proud bigots, invigorated by all that the regime has done that the rest of humanity finds abhorrent. And all that being said, our focus for fruitful dialogue should rather be directed on the less radicalized members of the left. Those that parrot nonsensical narratives such as the violent response from the black bloc to the fascists is the same as the fascists, right? Or violence is just being fascist. And a favorite for all of us, Antifa is the real fascist. And these narratives, aside from being traced directly back to far-right neo-Nazi online forums, are obviously misinterpretations of not only the nature of the responses from Black Bloc and other militant anti-fascist groups, especially in terms of defining what is or isn't actually violence, but in terms of the very definition of fascism itself. Apparently, there are masses of people who need a refresher on its literal definition. Or, maybe more specifically, people need not only refreshers, but up-to-date descriptions of the ways with which fascism adapts to its contemporary social climate. So anarchists, socialists, and communists alike will today describe fascism as the evidence of capitalism in crisis. It is the last desperate, strong-armed defense tactic of the massive mechanisms, bureaucracies, and armed military policing bodies of capitalism brought to bear on any and all that threaten its reign of oppression of the many for the benefit of an increasingly decreasing few. But the manifestation of the fascist expression of capitalism in crisis is seen by anarchists, socialists, and communists alike, or it should be, as an opportunity. That is to say that if fascism has been forced to play its hand, one could logically deduce that capitalism is therefore vulnerable. Anarchists and communists can therefore be seen, if I might risk a seemingly derogatory analogy, like sharks circling around a wounded and bleeding prey. They see their opportunity to dismantle and undo all the focus of their ire and criticisms, the machinations of our oppression, the greatest purveyor of misery and murder in the 21st century, capitalism. But, contrarily, that fascist strong-arm manifestation of capitalism is vicious. It uses neither logic nor compassion, only a blind, desperate hatred for its own sense of misinformed desperation and anything it perceives as the cause of it. It knows not good sense, only a blind hatred and an unwavering commitment to the utter destruction of anyone and everyone it perceives to be even a modicum of threat to its absolute and utter domination. A common thread of sloganing all throughout the many manifestations of fascism is a deep and visceral loathing and hatred for communism and anarchism. Chants of kill the commies and red scum off our streets have been prevalent at the fore of every fascist manifestation over history. Make no mistake, we are in a cyclical pattern of the vicious oppression of capitalism versus the universal freedom of socialism. And as I tap these keys, capitalism knows, in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis in the US, the numerous battles over austerity all throughout Europe, the rise of authoritarian and nationalist figures like Le Pen, Duterte, Erdogan, Trump, etc., the state of peaking oil all over the globe, the cornerstone foundation of our globalized economy, the hashtag #MeToo movement and the women's marches, the student walkouts and the teacher strikes, the complete disregard for the future of the very planet we live on, and the awakening of so many of the masses to that reality. With these and numerous other contributing factors and evidences, as I said, make no mistake, capitalism knows it's in trouble, and authoritarian fascism has naturally and organically manifested once again to protect it.
What started 2 months ago as protests against police brutality has now become a nightly ritual.
53 days, 7.5 weeks, Portland, Oregon has been burning.
And that made it a good place to start to try to figure out what this Antifa thing is all about. Most of the chaotic scenes on the news all come from a 2-block area in front of the Portland Justice Center.
A lot of battles against our right wing have gone down right here. This is our square.
Who is the our?
The people.
Okay.
Anybody who opposed fascism. Because they line up over there, so when we face off, this is where we face off across the street from them.
I see. Luis Marquez has been a fixture at leftist protests here for years and embraces the direct action Trump has focused on when characterizing the Antifa threat. And this is Homeland Security right here.
That's the Fed right there. So, this is the Justice Center. The police Portland police come out of here. They'll put snipers up top right there. These are gun ports that the Portland police that are in here will open up to shoot protesters.
That's kind of fucked up.
It's super fucked up.
When it comes to anti-fascism and the idea of Antifa, some people really don't know who the hell you guys are and what it is that you do, or even if you do exist.
You're using this word "you," right? So anti-fascism is a philosophy, right? So there's no, say, national Antifa group, right? There are a bunch of friends that identify with this philosophy of no fascism, of everybody being free, of people being equal, of rights being upheld.
So then if you subscribe to the philosophy, then you are Antifa.
Yes.
So then you would be Antifa.
Sure, okay, but I belong to no group, right? So, makes sense. No.
But you see how confusing this shit can be, right?
Well,
like
yeah, it's like being a Christian, but just like not belonging to a church. So.
But then you are a Christian still.
All right, yeah.
So for the sake of this interview, you're Antifa.
There we go. All right, there we go. Boom.
So, as an anti-fascist, you say that, you know, you all play a protective role, and specifically you have played a protective role.
Yes, sir.
In what way?
I have not allowed Proud Boys, neo-fascists, nativists, or Nazis to come into our crowds. Period.
And have they refused?
Some.
And then what? What does that mean?
We dance.
You dance a little bit?
We talk. We have a rap battle. It's all spoken word.
But now you are directly fighting the state on these grounds where, you know, federal troopers are here and you guys are confronting them.
Fascism has to be confronted wherever you find it. Whether it's some stupid motherfucker rocking the Confederate battle flag or federal troops. Fascism is fascism.
Okay, somebody understands fascism. And they're like, yeah, I'm against that. But wait a minute, this dude's going around slapping Nazis in the face. I don't know if that's me.
Anti-fascism is broad. You don't have to do what I do to be anti-fascist. You have to say, hey, not accepting people for who they are, not giving them the opportunities that another group has, that's fascist. And if you're against those things, then you're anti-fascist.
Luis sees racism and structural injustice underneath the broad umbrella of fascism in America. Like him, many we spoke to were reluctant to identify under a single banner of Antifa, making it hard to associate any individual's actions to an official group. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has consistently described a coordinated onslaught of violence. Where's Antifa?
Everywhere, bro. Everyone here is anti-fascist. Do you hear? That's the cops, yeah? Get your mask. That's the cops.
All right, if he says the feds are pulling up with tear gas, I believe him. So I'm about to put my mask on.
I mean, what we heard was the police announce to disperse. Everything generally comes right after that.
Right.
Right, so.
Night after night in Portland, this has been the pattern. The marches and speeches end, and the chaos begins. Luis took us to the front.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
That's the gas man!
Right now,
don't run!
There's tear gas in the air. The federal troops are moving people back, and Luis is going straight to the front.
We're here to confront fascists. Can't confront them in your back.
Where are the federal troops? Oh! Shit! Oh! I just got hit by...
There you go, man! That's where they are! Go, come on! I'll get you out! Go, 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 go! Go, I got you! Hold on to me! Hold on to my backpack! Hold on to my back! You're right here. How you doing? You okay?
Yeah, I just got hit.
You just got shot by federal troops using weapons of fucking war. That's what just happened. That's a sniper. That's what we got hit by. That's the dude that lit us up. That's gonna piss him off.
But is this not provoking them to fire on the crowd?
Sure it is.
Like throwing the fireworks up?
Sure it is. I mean, it seems something like, didn't Dr. King marching across that bridge in Selma encourage the police to attack him? But is the response appropriate? They're gonna fuck us up tonight. Here we go.
Look at him, dancing, right before he's about to get shot.
Since the election of Donald Trump, we have been fighting a fucking war here in Portland. Since the... Okay, hold on to my back. Hold on to my back. Don't run! You see what they're doing? They're firing at us indiscriminately, knowing that women and children and mothers and fucking grandmothers are here.
Luis is just taking somebody's seal, going straight to the front. I want to correct that guy. Flashbangs! Down here, there's tear gas canisters being shot at the protesters, and they're being dispersed and pushed back. And you can see there's dads here in leaf blowers. They're blowing the tear gas, but people don't have to disperse. And the tear gas is strong. They'll go back there, regroup, and come right back to the front line. This will happen over and over again throughout the night.
I was there when it was people chanting and giving speeches peacefully. And bro, in a matter of 10 to 15 minutes, it turned to bedlam.
Nothing changed. Nothing changed except for the pigs. I told you, I was like, get your mask on. Y'all was like, why? It's like it's about to happen.
So what's next?
Tonight,
Yeah.
we go back.
Shit.
Let's go.
You hear that?
You have an interest.
You hear that? It's back on. We just got out of it. We're going back in. What'd you say?
You got an interesting time of asking questions, man. Like, we're the cops. We just shot. What's next? There's a boom.
Another day.
Another day, ready to go make our voices heard. How you doing?
My knee hurts.
I'm bruised up on the side.
Or did you? You got?
Yeah, I got a couple shots. When you did.
Oh.
I got hit, and then I saw that flashbang, and I got hit in the side of the head. But
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
So you want to see something?
I don't know what you got for me to see.
I got something. So.
This dude's full of surprises. Bro, what the?
This is what they've been using to shoot us.
Souvenirs?
Yeah. These are CS canisters. These are the canisters that shoot us. This is chain ball CS. You can feel the pellets in that, right? That's this stuff.
Wait, oh, this is what I got shot with last night.
Yeah, yeah. Let me show you one last thing.
What is this? This dude got a museum of the protest. Bro, man, what?
That's a live grenade.
Man, put that shit back in the car, man.
That's what?
See, I'm cool with these because they've been used already, but I'm not even gonna touch that.
But that's what these are right there, right? You see? And then they pull the pin, throw them, and then it breaks apart. That's what they're deploying on United States citizens that are out there saying Black Lives Matter.
What I witnessed last night was crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah. Now, it started off as a peaceful protest led by black folks, leading chants of Black Lives Matter. Then it turned into mofos trying to break down the barricade at the federal building, right? And they didn't come out until you guys were out there provoking them. It's almost like you guys are feeding each other because you don't want the troops here, so you go fight them. When you go fight them, Trump says this is the reason why the troops are there, because you guys are fighting them. And in that tit for tat, this cat and mouse game between you guys and the federal troops, folks over there, Black Lives Matter, are like, yo, we still here, homie. What you guys doing ain't about us.
I hear that. I too am a person of color, right? I don't tell you how to fight. Don't tell me how to fight, right? We're all working towards the same goal, right? Different streams, different rivers all go to the same ocean. They're all necessary, all tactics. But if you want to look at the timeline of Portland, we were wrapping up. We were ready to go home. We're not the ones that sent feds here, snatching people off the street, citizens. That's what made people come back out. That's what brought your moms out. That's what brought your veterans out.
Can we talk just like candidly about last night, bro?
Sure.
At one point, you were anticipating the federal troops getting ready to fire on us again, and you and some other folks were just dancing.
Yeah.
As if you were excited.
No. Look, I mean, this is a f***ing bullet, bro. You know those guns that you saw yesterday?
Yes, bro,
That's what they put in. This shot you. That don't make you mad?
Yeah, it makes me a little pissed, bro.
If we go home, we say it's okay to do this shit. If you get shot with this and you're like, okay, I give up, what do you think the next time they're gonna do? And the time after that, and the time after that. You have to. Am I nervous when we know they're gonna rush? Yup. And do I have that energy? And is that why I bounce? Yup. But what else you do before you potentially die? Why not dance? Because what do I have compared to this? What do I have compared to any of this? Nothing.
So I'm going to leave you with a quote from Enrico Malatesta. So Enrico Malatesta says, "The slave is always in a state of legitimate defense, and consequently, his violence against the boss, against the oppressor, is always morally justifiable, and must be controlled only by such considerations as that the best and most economical use is being made of human effort and human sufferings."
Pressure pushing down on me, pressing down on you. No man has fall under pressure that burns a building down, splits a family in two, puts people on streets. That's okay. It's the terror of knowing what this world is about. Watching some good friends screaming, let me out. Pray tomorrow gets me higher. Pressure on people, people on streets. Okay. Chipping around, kick my brains round the floor. These are the days, it never rains but it pours. Eat on my eat 'em up, jump up, bail up. People on streets, eat-a-dee-da-dee. People on streets, eat-a-dee-da-dee-da-dee-da. It's the terror of knowing what this world is about. Watching some good friends screaming, let me out. Pray tomorrow gets me higher, higher. Pressure on people, people on streets. Turned away from it all like a blind man. Sat on a fence, but it don't work. Keep coming up with love, but it's so slashed and torn. Love, 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 love. Insanity laughs on the pressure we're breaking. Can we give ourselves one more chance? Why can't we give love that one more chance? Why can't we give love, 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 give love? 'Cause love's such an old-fashioned word, and love dares you to care for the people on the edge of the night, and love dares you to change your way of caring about ourselves. This is our last dance. This is our last dance. This is ourselves. Under pressure. Under pressure. Pressure.
Now, fascism is about to make a complete and utter clampdown on Western culture. It's happening in the halls of power, and it's being backed up by thugs on the street. But there's a reason I'm joyful, because I am staring at the pages of history. Know that for sure. This is the pivotal, singular, most important struggle of this time. This is it. History has thrust itself on us. And you have answered the call. I've been coming out here for all these things since Milo and the struggles in MLK Park. And each time there's more of you here. And you need to give yourself credit for that. Because when you come out here and stand here, your friends want to know why you went and stood out here today. And then you have the opportunity to tell them why. And then they will come with you next time. There's a reason I'm here, okay? I'm just a weird old man and an old punk rocker. That's where I am, okay? But I remember in the 80s and the 90s, the Nazi skinheads that beat the piss out of me and my friends. And I remember the things that they said. We don't hate minorities. We just want a place for us. It's the same garbage they're saying now. Exactly word for word. And it fooled us when they carted it out this time. Because they weren't wearing bomber jackets and Doc Martens with bald heads going like this. They said, no, we're just Trump supporters. We just want to practice our free speech. Well, I saw their free speech in Charlottesville when they murdered Heather Heyer. That is the end result of their free speech. But I'm joyful because I'm standing with you. We can be joyful with each other. Our whole struggle doesn't have to be about being against. We can be against, but we can do it together. And everyone is welcome to join us. You will be welcomed with open arms because this is the pivotal moment. Fascism is about to take over Western culture. It is poised to become consistent and unbroken for the rest of history. It fooled us when Hitler and Mussolini and Franco came to power, but you're not fooled this time, are you? You're not fooled this time. Are you against fascism? You are Antifa. You are. You are Antifa. And if you don't like the things that you see on the news that the Black Bloc does and some of the things that Antifa does, there's a way to make sure they don't have to do that. This is what you keep doing. This is how you make sure that this is a non-violent resistance to fascism. We outnumber them in the millions. You need to come out in the street and prove it. And you are. And I love you and adore you for it. Thank you. My heart is with you. We are going to win. And this will be the last time humanity has to fight against fascism. And you will have done it. Thank you.